What's up, friends? Today we are going to be doing our very first official board review on the channel. And we're going to be starting out with a fun one. This is the Revel Kit. In this video, we're going to be going through all the strengths and weaknesses of the Revel Kit in the high quality and detailed fashion that I always do. In addition, we're going to be introducing two exciting new things to the channel, and the first of those is the RBEM Score for boards. The second of those is the PSPEC, which is a new score that I'll be formulating in this video and showing you at the very end that objectively tests a board's performance and gives you something to look at when comparing all of the different boards that I review. So stick around to the very end to figure out exactly how each of those pan out in the scoring section. Alright, let's get right into this review. Now, the first question we're going to be answering is, what is the Revel Kit? But before that, let's talk about Revel for a second. Revel has been around for quite a while now, and this is their singular e-skate offering. However, it is interesting in 2021 to see an e-skate company with a single board on the market, as that's pretty uncommon. But the Revel Kit just keeps on going and going, and I don't think Revel has any plans to release a new board in the near future, but it would be pretty interesting to see an upgrade on this current kit. So part of the reason for making this video is to show you guys the performance and specs of the Revel Kit and how I've used it throughout the years, and give you guys a good idea of the unique features that might make you want to pick the Revel Kit over other competition. I've had my Revel Kit for a couple of years now, so I'm pretty familiar with its features, strengths, and weaknesses, so we're going to go through those in this review. Now, first off, let me introduce you to the Revel Kit. Let's reiterate, what exactly is the Revel Kit? It's exactly that. The Revel Kit is a modular electric skateboard drive that you can bolt onto nearly any longboard deck on the market, provided that it doesn't have a drop down. The Revel Kit has two direct drive motors, a unique remote, a swappable battery, and also good durability. Now let's start off by setting some ground expectations of what this is not. This Revel Kit is not a high-performance LaCroix or Cali or something crazy that will blow your socks off with its acceleration and its incredibly long range. However, what the Revel Kit is a reliable, comfortable commuter board with the ability to switch wheels easily, swap the battery, and pretty much take it wherever you want. If I had to pick my favorite thing about the Revel Kit, is that it just goes and goes. Now, personally, this is like my third board on the bench to ride, so I don't personally ride it that much, but my wife is the one that always rides this because it's super easy to use and it's really predictable. Now, because of this, it only has around 350 miles on it, but I know people on the forum and on Facebook and whatnot that have taken the Revel Kit for thousands of miles without any major issues. It's so easy to take care of because of the direct drive. There's no major maintenance or anything like that, so it just keeps on going and going. Now, let's get into some actual specs of this board. The Revel Kit is a little bit less complex to talk about than other boards because it is a kit. So the Revel Kit is outfitted with two direct drive motors that are fastened to the rear truck. The website claims that these motors can output 1,100 watts of power, but it doesn't make it clear if that's combined power or peak power or constant power. And usually manufacturers will put peak power there, so it's really just a weird way to measure it. But at 1,100 watts seems reasonable to me, and that kind of matches up with the decent acceleration that the Revel Kit has. The Revel Kit has a swappable battery, and that comes in 2 different sizes, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. The kit itself mounts to the deck using 4 bolts like a standard longboard truck, and has both new school and old school patterns available in its actual base plate, so should be pretty easy to mount to whatever deck you choose using either of those patterns and 4 standard hardware bolts. The weight of the kit comes in at about 7 pounds and 4 ounces for the kit itself, and then 2 pounds and 13 ounces for the extended range batteries. I don't have a standard range battery on me right now, so unfortunately I won't be able to give you that weight, but either way, it's decently light. The size of the Revel Kit comes in decently small, with the length coming out to about 13-ish inches, the width of the direct drive motors coming out to a little bit over 7 inches, and the depth coming in at about 4 inches. The actual battery part of the kit itself isn't too thick, and I've never really had any major issues crashing into things on the ground or getting stuck on speed bumps or anything like that, provided you use the right size wheels, which we will also talk about later. The trucks on the Revel Kit aren't really anything too special, with the front one being a Paris clone and the rear one just being a custom hanger for the motors on a Paris clone base plate. The bushings for the Revel Kit, well, the default ones anyway, weren't really my favorite, so I ended up switching them out to a combination of Riptide and Venom ones. So your mileage may vary on if you like the default ones or not, but for me, I found it more comfortable to switch them out. On to the next section, which is the deck for the Revel Kit. Now, this is probably the most unique part of the Revel Kit in that you can pretty much use whatever deck you want. Normally when you buy an electric skateboard, you're stuck with the deck that it comes with, otherwise you have to do a swap of all the electronics, and depending on the board that can get kind of annoying. For the Revel Kit, you can put it on any deck that you have pretty much, or you can buy one for it, you could buy one with it. But the nice thing is that you can swap it from deck to deck in your own home. So for me, I like to ride on this flexible deck, but my wife has a short one that she rides on. I also have a stiff one that I've put it on before, and it's just really great to have the ability to switch between different decks and just give you the ability to pick whatever you want. Some people like pintail boards, some people like really concave boards that are stiff, and some people like flexible ones. Personally, I think my favorite setup that I've ridden is on either the loaded Vanguard, which is the same as the boosted deck, or the Bust and Cigar, which is another super flexible deck. Both of those provide a really comfortable experience, and it just really makes it a lot of fun. The one drawback is that you are not able to mount the Revel Kit to a drop deck. So anything that has a micro drop or a drop that puts the truck mounting position at a different level than the standing area is not going to work, because the Revel Kit is a large flat piece that needs to mount solidly onto the truck mounting points. Onto wheels. Now, wheels are another exciting subject for the Revel Kit because it's another thing where you can have a lot of customizability. Now, the Revel Kit ships with a ABEC core adapter and a Kegel core adapter. I can't remember if it's the clone ABEC adapter that ships with or not, but you're able to purchase the clone one on their website anyway. And I've got that here because you got to use that for the cloud wheels. But with these 3 adapters, you're able to use pretty much any rubber or urethane wheel on the market. So right here, I've got some 105mm cloud wheels. I've got the Onsra wheels, and I've got the Torqueboard 110 wheels, and 2 of these are Kegel core, and the cloud wheels are that clone ABEC core. On the board right now, I've got some all-in Papokas, which are 90mm Kegel core wheels, and this is just a tiny bit of the list. There's tons of urethane wheels on the market, anything from orangutan to hybrid drive wheels to the Beast Board wheels, and all kinds of things like that. Now, the Revel Kit does have these 3 adapters, but there's a couple omissions. One of those is the Eovan windmill core, and another is like the Venom Magnum core, but those are super small wheels, so you probably wouldn't want to use those anyway. Now, one thing to note, switching wheels out is super easy on the Revel Kit. All you have to do is take off the wheel nut, and then take off the 4 screws that hold on the adapter. Then you're able to switch between the Kegel or the ABEC. And this is way easier than switching wheels on a belt drive board because you don't have to think about belts, you don't have to think about pulleys, you don't have to think about how your ratio is going to change or anything like that. With the Revel Kit, you have one torque value and you basically just change that using your wheel size. In addition, your top speed will change depending on your wheel size, and that's the point of having the ability to change the wheel size on the remote in order to accurately capture your speed. Now, one last thing, it is important to remember that changing wheels will also change your braking and acceleration. So for something like a 90mm wheel, you're going to have the best braking acceleration versus something like a 115mm wheel, where the braking and the acceleration are going to be considerably weaker. Now, that's not to say you can't use either of those, but for me, my favorite has been the 105mm cloud wheels. I think they're a great combination of good acceleration and braking, as well as good comfort and decent ground clearance. You might have already noticed, but the Revel Kit has a swappable battery pack. This whole battery right here can be taken off and swapped at any time. I'll play a quick clip right now to show you how to do that. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and change the battery on the Revel Kit right now. And first of all, make sure you turn off the kit and the remote before you change the battery. There was a bug a while back where you would lose your total mileage if you didn't turn off the board. So make sure you do that. So to release the battery, all you have to do is press in the button, and then you're going to want to pull up. And the reason I'm doing it in this weird position is because this is the best way that I've found to do this. So you lean over your board, press in the battery, and pull it up with your 2 hands. And then we'll just go ahead and swap in the new one. And there you go. It takes about 10 seconds. As you saw in that clip, it's super easy to just swap the battery out, and it only takes a couple of seconds. For me, I usually carry an extra battery with me on my rides because I will tend to go over 10 miles and, well, we'll get to the range later, but I just usually want to carry 2. Now, there are 2 options available for the batteries, the standard range battery and the extended range battery. The extended range battery is only a little bit more expensive than the standard range, and for me, I honestly don't see any point in buying the standard range, except that Revel is still offering this because they're probably one of the only boards that has a swappable battery that you can take on an airplane. So if you do a lot of travel and you want to take your Revel Kit with you, maybe you should pick up a standard range battery. Now, the range of the standard range battery is going to be a little bit less, well, probably a good bit less than the extended range. So much so that I don't even have any standard range batteries. I have 3 extended range batteries, and typically on a ride I'll ride one and take the other, but since my wife rides it and she's pretty light, usually it's not really gonna use more than a single battery, but it's always nice to have a replacement just in case. Onto the actual range. Now, if you've been a part of the electric skateboarding community for a while, or you've been looking around, you might know that electric skateboard companies just love to overhype their mileage. Most people claim that they get a lot more mileage than they actually do. Not looking at anyone in particular. But anyway, Revel is pretty good about it. Revel claims that the extended range battery will get between 10 and 15 miles, and the standard range will get between 6 and 10. In my testing, I've gotten a pretty consistent 10 to 12 miles on an extended range battery. Now, this is partly due to riding speed, due to not riding as many hills, due to the Revel's power, but I've also had friends ride it and they've easily gotten 9 miles on a lot of hills and with a much higher weight. I personally weigh about 165 pounds, and for me, during my range test, I was able to get almost 11 miles out of it, using the 90mm wheels anyway. If you switch to a larger wheel, your range will go down, and that's partly due to the additional mass of the spinning wheel, partly due to the compound of the wheel, but anyway, the range is pretty good overall. Now, since the batteries are swappable, I like to carry an extra with me like I mentioned, and that'll easily get me 20 miles, and if my wife rides it, she's a little lighter than me, and she'll definitely get over 30 miles on just 2 batteries. So that pretty much covers almost every ride that I want to do. Most people will probably fall into that range as well, and even though there might be a couple people that'll want to ride all day, they could just charge in the middle and charge up both of their swappable packs at the same time. Let's talk a little bit about the remote. Now, this remote for the Revel Kit is probably something that you've not seen before, and I could understand on initial consideration it might not necessarily look like something that you would want to use all the time, but it really is a quite comfortable remote. It's really predictable, it's super intuitive, and it's easy to use. If you've come from using a thumb wheel remote, this will be pretty familiar to you, as going forwards is acceleration and pulling back is brake. Now, if you'll notice here, there's a lot more room in the acceleration side than there is in the braking side, and that makes it really easy to start off on the board, even if you're brand new to e-skate. Honestly, this remote makes this board really great for novice riders because it's almost impossible to throw yourself off, especially if you're in one of the lower speed modes, because you won't get up to a high speed very quickly. Now, let's go through some of the actual utilities on this remote. Now, I will mention that one thing that I'm not a huge fan of is that when you turn the remote on, you're not able to see the remote battery life until you actually go ahead and turn the board on. So we'll do that right now, and I'll show you guys some B-roll on screen of what it looks like. But on the main screen, you have your board battery life on the right top side, your remote battery life on the left top side, your wheel size, your speed mode, your actual speed that you're currently traveling, if you're in 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive. I'm not sure what this other stuff in the middle is. And then you have your overall mileage counter and your current mileage counter. Now, to enter configuration mode, you pull back the throttle and press the button 5 times, and this will allow you to change some settings. The first is remote mode, which is 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive, depending on if you have it set up for each of those. Then you can adjust brake level, your wheel diameter, Bluetooth, which has been a upcoming feature for a long time. Revel is still working on the app for your phone, but I guess that'll be something that you can use in the future. That's pretty much it for remote configuration. It's not a whole lot, but it's also just enough to get you by with your wheel changes and be able to adjust the brakes a little bit. Alright guys, so we're about to record the acceleration and braking testing on the Revel Kit, and for this I just really want to get the numbers, but I'll show you a little bit of footage. For our acceleration test, we're going to be going from 0 to 20 from a standstill, and then for our braking test, we're going from 15 miles an hour and then slamming on the brakes as hard as we can to stop as fast as possible. And for the braking, we'll be coming out with a feet measurement, so I'll measure how many feet past the line that I stop. And then for the acceleration, we'll come out with a seconds measurement, how many seconds it takes for the board to get from 0 to 20 miles an hour. For the acceleration testing, I pretty much just pinned the throttle out to 100%, and I stopped accelerating as soon as I saw 20 hit the screen. A couple of these clips cut out at 19 miles an hour, but the Revel Kit actually measures a little bit slow, so all of these did actually get to 20. For the braking testing, I basically just used this flat part of the street and put a tape line down where I would immediately start braking. At this point, I was at 15 miles an hour and I full slammed on the brakes until I stopped. After that, I was able to measure out the distance for each of my braking tests. Alright, so I just concluded my braking test. You can see the start line is right there, and then the end of the braking is over here. So I'm gonna have to measure this all out now. I did 4 tests. One of them I got here, one there, and then 2 ended at almost exactly the same spot. So we'll average it all out and we'll come up with a braking distance. For the top speed testing, I was able to go over to a relatively smooth road and pull out my GPS tracking app to track the top speed. For this, I pretty much just pinned on the throttle and waited to see how fast I could go. During this testing, I reached 24 miles an hour. In the past, on a different deck setup that's a little more stable, I was able to reach 28 miles an hour by the Revel Kit remote. And by GPS, that's actually a little bit faster, so that's about what you get. To test the torque, I hooked up one side of my crane scale to a solid post and the other side to my truck on my Revel Kit, with the lead right at the top of the wheel. Doing this should give an accurate test result, and I'll do this with all boards going forwards. Alright, hopefully you enjoyed all that testing. But now it's time for some exciting stuff. In this video, we're going to be introducing the PSPEC and the RBEM Score for boards. So stay tuned and we'll get to those right now. We're about to hop into all the data for the PSPEC, but real quick, I just want to say thank you for all the support I've received on the channel lately. We're almost at 400 subs, and it would mean a lot to me if you guys could push me over that 400 mark by the end of this year. So if you haven't subbed yet and you're enjoying the video, go ahead and do that right now. Anyways, it's time to get into the PSPEC. This is super exciting, and I've got a bunch of data to share with you guys and talk about real quick. On the screen, I'm going to be showing all of my data right here, and these are the categories that you guys just saw in all of that testing. We've got acceleration, torque, top speed, braking, and range. These 5 components are what I believe make up all the important performance specs for a board. Now, since these are all numbers, it gives us something that's really good to compare all different kinds of boards. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. I've got all the data here on my phone, so I will be going through all that with you guys right now. Not too much to talk about here. I mostly just want to show you the data that I've got. The acceleration on this board is pretty average, leaning towards the weaker side, honestly. And we came out to a minimum acceleration time of 7.52 seconds to get to 20 miles an hour. I expect that my DIY boards will be a lot faster, but I've yet to test those yet. For the torque, I used my crane scale like you saw in the videos before, and I lined up this scale with the top of the wheel, which allows me to calculate the torque. And after doing all those runs, our maximum torque value that we came out to is 10.11 Newton meters. It's worth mentioning that the Revel Kit actually has a built-in stall protection feature that cuts off the ESC power after detecting a complete motor stall for more than about, I think, 3 to 5 seconds. So just keep that in mind. Our top speed testing, I did a couple of them in the video, but I've also done in the past. So 2 of these runs are old and 2 of them are from the video. But our top speed that I was able to get on the 90mm wheels was 28 miles an hour, which is decently fast as electric skateboards go, especially for a cheaper one like this one. But, you know, top speed will vary depending on what wheels you've got on. So for 90mm, the top speed is 28, but for something like 115, you might have a top speed of like 35. So it's up to you to test it out, but make sure you change that number on the remote to make sure your speed is accurate. I did measure my speed with a GPS signal on my phone, so that's where I got the actual numbers, not from the remote. Our braking distance on the Revel Kit is average. The brakes are super predictable though, and it's pretty hard to throw yourself off. So for the braking, as you saw in the video, I just slammed on my brakes as soon as I hit that tape line. And our minimum braking distance that I was able to get was 30 feet. Now, I'm sure again that my DIY boards will be a lot shorter than that, but BESC-based electronic speed controllers are known to be pretty strong on the braking, so we'll see how that goes. For the range, this battery is a little bit old, but you know, it still gets a decent bit of range for what it is. On the 90mm wheels, I was able to get 11.1 miles, and that is measured by 2 different GPS apps. The Revel remote actually said it was only 10 miles, which is kind of weird, but I always go by the GPS mileage because it just seems to be more accurate than the Revel remote. So bringing all these scores together was a little bit difficult. The PSPEC is brand new to the channel and to YouTube, So I had to come up with a way to combine all these scores together. We've got things that are good when they're low numbers, we've got things that are good when they're high numbers. So I had to create a way to combine all these together in a weighted fashion that makes sense. So if you want to know all of the weighting for this, I'll put it in the description or something if people are interested. But just in the basics, the acceleration and range are weighted higher according to some Instagram questions that I asked, and the torque and top speed are the lowest, with braking being in the middle. So taking all that into consideration, I created a formula, and the formula comes out to 26.5 points for the Revel Kit. Now, obviously you're not gonna have anything to compare this to, so I've created a couple example boards that will help you guys understand the score a little bit better and what kind of numbers we could get from it. For the examples on here, they're all virtual, so I just created things that I thought would be physically possible. But here you have a very wide range, varying from example 5 with its super low numbers all the way up to example 4, which would be like a crazy DIY board, or even in La Croix. It's got 80 miles of range, really short braking distance, a high top speed, and a ton of torque. So as I test different boards on the channel, you'll get lots more numbers on the PSPEC. And that is what we're going to use to determine how good a board is based on its numbers and performance. It is now time for the RBEM Score for boards. I've picked a bunch of different characteristics that I think describe whether or not you should buy a board, and on the screen you will see each of these different categories and the scores that I have attributed to them. Now, it is worth mentioning that at the end of the day, buying a board is very subjective, and you will ultimately have to make the decision for yourself and pick what different aspects are important to you. However, you're here watching a review of my opinions, so the RBEM Score is what I think of the board, and basically you should just use it as a tool to decide whether or not the board will be right for you. Anyways, let's get into the scoring. One of the most important things to me on a board is the build quality and durability. The Revel Kit is high in this category, and it has some of the best direct drive motors on the market. These direct drive motors have been through a ton of stuff on my board, lots of rocks, lots of bangs, curbs, and everything, and they just keep going without any issues. Now, my kit only has about 350 miles on it, but I've known people to get thousands on it without any major issues. In the past, there were some issues with the case cracking, but Revel has fixed those and the plastic is now upgraded. The only other thing that's really worth mentioning is that over time the battery can get a little bit difficult to slide out, but it's kind of a minor issue, so I'm not really going to knock many points off for that. The Revel Kit is very high quality overall, with high quality plastics and materials, and it gets an 8 out of 10 for a pretty durable build and very high quality. The deck is another extremely important part of an electric board, as is the piece of material that you stand on the entire time you're riding, between your feet and the ground. Now, the Revel Kit has a big important feature here, which is that it can mount to almost any deck on the market. However, it's not able to be mounted to drop decks because of the design, and you have to buy the deck yourself if you don't buy it with the initial purchase, so it loses a point for that. But for its great flexibility, the Revel Kit gets a 9 out of 10 for the deck. The next most important thing to me is the remote. This is the thing that stays connected to your board that you hold in your hand and wirelessly keeps you alive through consistent acceleration and braking. Now, in my experience, although unique, the Revel Kit remote has been great. The super consistent acceleration and easy braking makes it a really easy remote to use. It's useful, reliable, and it even has some helpful telemetry data. Now, the Revel remote default battery is not great, so I ended up upgrading mine aftermarket, and you can't really change too many settings on it, but for a very good overall experience, the Revel Kit remote gets an 8 out of 10. We haven't really talked much about the ESC in this video because it's really just not that special. The Revel Kit uses a Hobbywing derivative ESC to power it forwards, and it's really just nothing to write home about. It is super reliable, predictable, and consistent, so I guess it has that going for it, but it's by no means a powerhouse like a Vesk or even something like a belt drive board. With the ESC in combination with the direct drive motors, you have a pretty decent and fun experience, but since it's really got a low performance ceiling, the ESC gets only a 7 out of 10. Trucks and bushings are two important contributors to the overall ride feel, and while many people do change out their bushings or even some of their trucks, there are many people that don't change them at all. So we are evaluating the stock bushings on the Revel Kit, and while I didn't actually ride them that long, I quickly found that I didn't like them that much. So the default bushings, I don't really know what kind of hardness they are, but they weren't great for high-speed stability or low-speed turning, so I ended up changing them out to some ones by Riptide and Venom. But, you know, this will vary for everyone. So onto the trucks. The trucks are fine, no problems with them at all. I don't really see anyone complaining about trucks braking. The rear truck especially is very strong, which is not super common in direct drive or hub motor boards. So I'm definitely happy with that. And these Paris clones give it a pretty high rating. So overall, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 for the trucks and bushings. Many boards these days have all-terrain conversion kits, so I felt it important to include wheel options in these videos. For the Revel Kit, you do have a lot of wheel options covering most of the urethane and rubber wheels on the market. However, you're not able to really put pneumatic wheels on here, not that you would want to. So for the incomplete flexibility options, but decent overall, the Revel Kit gets a 4 out of 5. Most electric skateboards are not properly rated for actual water resistance, but the Revel Kit actually has an IP rating. So with the IP rating of IP54, means that the Revel Kit is pretty much impervious to dust, and it is basically allowed to have limited water spray from all directions. So what this translates to is that puddles are fine, but don't go riding in the rain, and I'd probably still wipe down my board after a ride through a bunch of puddles. So for decent water resistance, I will give the Revel Kit a 3 out of 5. Only 2 categories left, but one of them is customer service. I found it important to include customer service in these review videos because it is often true that electric boards break, and sometimes you're just gonna need to talk to the manufacturer. So good news for you, Revel Boards is US based, especially with their support team. So communicating with them is easy, and it's really easy to get understanding across, unlike how it can be with some other foreign-based electric skateboard companies. Now, the Revel Boards team is still pretty small, so the response time might not always be the greatest, but for me, while a little bit biased, I have had a pretty great experience overall, and I've been talking to them for a long time. So if you ever have a problem with your Revel Kit, they will help you out, so don't be afraid to reach out to them either through their chat on their website or email or whatever. And I give them a pretty good rating of 4 out of 5. For our final category of price and value, we're going to talk a little bit longer. There are many boards out there at almost every price point for every kind of buyer. And the Revel Kit falls into a kind of interesting nook. Being that it is an electric skateboard kit, it doesn't really bring you the same package as something like an X-Way or Backfire or Wowgo like that would bring. So it's kind of hard to consider what category it would fall into. But as for the actual price, the Revel Kit comes in at just a little bit under $800 for a single dual drive kit and one battery, or one extended range battery. I would recommend most people get 2 batteries, so just go ahead and bump it up to the Ride More bundle, which gives you a little bit of a discount on your second battery, bringing the total to about $930. With the Ride More kit coming in just below $1,000 like that, it's kind of hard to compare it to a lot of other things on the market because the Revel Kit can get a lot of range with your swappable batteries, and it can be really comfortable, and you know, it's really hard to compare. So for me and my experience, it has served its purpose perfectly. And for me, the value is really high. But again, value is really subjective. So my value proposition might not be yours. But since it is a super unique kit, you're able to change all the wheels, you're able to put it on most decks, I'm gonna give it a pretty high rating of 4 out of 5. Before we leave this section, I just want to mention that I do have a referral link in the description and a discount code for you guys to use in case you want to get $20 off your kit. We'll show that right here on screen, and we'll move on to the composite score. Now that I've presented all of these categories and all of their different scores, what's the total? Well, the total for the Revel Kit, the first board that I reviewed on this channel, is 55 out of 70. Unfortunately, you don't have anything to compare that to because it's the first one. But in my future board reviews, the Revel Kit will always be on those scoring pages so you can get a comparison. At this time, I don't have any new boards on their way to me, but I'm definitely looking for other companies that would like to work with me and actually review boards. So any board that comes on the channel will be put through all the same testing and scoring procedures. So if there's any companies that are watching this right now that want to send me a board, go ahead and hit me up at my email in the About section on my channel. Anyways, this is pretty much all I have to say about the composite score. I think the Revel Kit did pretty well overall, and let's go ahead and get on with the outro. Alright guys, we have reached the end of my first board review. Now, this video took a ton of work. I had to come up with all of these new things for this first review, but I'm really excited for all of my future reviews that I do on the channel and the future of this channel in general. I really appreciate all the support you guys have been giving me, and I'm looking forward to hitting 400 and 500 subs and even above. Who knows where we'll go in the future? I've got lots of things planned though, and I hope you guys will stay tuned. Now, while the RBEM Score and the PSPEC are my scores, I'm totally open to your guys' suggestions. So if you have anything that you think I should add to the PSPEC or the RBEM Score for boards, I'm totally open to your suggestions, and feel free to leave those in the comments or direct message me on the forum or on Instagram or whatever. I'll always reply to you guys and make sure you get all of your questions answered. Now, if you stayed all the way to the end of this video, thank you so much, and it would mean a lot to me if you could like the video if you liked it. And there's not really a lot that I have to say at this point, but I hope you guys really enjoyed, and stay safe, keep on riding, and peace out.